Hey, Four Visions Tribe. Welcome back to the podcast. I hope you all had an incredible summer and just really excited to be back and connecting with you all once again. As we enter the second half of season 1, I wanted to share some updates for both Four Visions as a brand as well as what we got cooking this fall with the podcast. First, just want to say that we are so grateful for the opportunity to utilize our platform to make such a positive impact in the Indigenous communities that we are in partnership with. We wanted to share some updates with you of some of the incredible projects that we've been supporting this year. Children of the Rainforest is one of our nonprofit partners that are based and focused in supporting New Hope Village, one of the Yawanawa villages in Acre, Brazil. And they are thriving after the inauguration of their language and cultural school. School is now actively in session for the Yawanawa youth of New Hope Village. Four Visions' monthly contributions have been directed towards paying the salaries of the teachers and helping with the maintenance and upkeep of the school. Under Chief Iskakua's guidance and vision, Children of the Rainforest is now expanding their language school and cultural reclamation center. And Four Visions has just committed to sponsoring the build of one of the 4 additional classrooms that they want to build this year. If you are interested in supporting the great work that Children of the Rainforest are doing, check out rainforestchildren.org. Go to Yawa Kids, YAWA Kids.com to get the inauguration album of the Children of the New Hope Village. An update about our Planting Magic initiative with Magic Fund Amazon. We have now raised the funds for the first 10 hectares of land in Putumayo, and we have begun planting the endangered medicinal botanical plant species as part of our preservation project. We are raising more funds now to fund the reforestation and planting of the entire 10 hectares. After that, we will work towards building a traditional ceremonial maloka, which will serve as a center for the preservation of the Ingano culture. Learn more and donate by going to magicfundamazon.com. Four Visions is also sponsoring a very special music project in partnership with Magic Fund, produced by none other than the amazing Ajit Kaur. This album features songs by Taita Juanito, Pia, Ajit, and other incredible medicine musicians in our family. The proceeds of this album are going to Magic Fund's Planting Magic initiative. Stay on the lookout with news for how to pre-order the album in the next few weeks. We're also thrilled to have teamed up with HEAL, the Heaven and Earth Ancestral League, a new 501c3 organization dedicated to supporting the indigenous plant medicine cultures and the Western citizen who seeks an encounter with them. This August, we sent 2 veterans on scholarship to Colombia through HEAL's veteran program, Operation Purify, to visit Finca Sacha Samay for a 14-day ancestral healing retreat. We look forward to continuing to support veterans through this initiative and others. And now for the podcast. Wow, let me just say thank you for receiving this offering with so much love and support. This whole show has been an incredible opportunity to start sharing and having really important conversations about how we go integrating plant medicines into the modern world in a good way. I have absolutely loved learning from, speaking with, and connecting with so many incredible thought leaders in the plant medicine and entheogen space. And the feedback we have been getting from you, our tribe, makes all the effort behind getting these episodes out so worth it. I am growing so much through this podcast as well as through Four Visions as a whole. And wow, we have been in some big growth cycles. I'm constantly coming back to humility and gratitude for this opportunity to steward the prayer that is Four Visions. So thank you for being along for the journey with me. We have so many epic guests lined up over the coming weeks, and we'll also be sharing some exciting updates for the brand throughout the next season, so you can stay up to date as we roll out some big new things. More on that to come. And one last thing before we introduce today's amazing guest. New to the show this season is our podcast giveaway raffle. We wanted to create a little segment in the show where we would have the opportunity to highlight our community's feedback for the show while giving away some of our products. So that is a new element for this season. Every episode, halfway through the show, you'll hear this new 4-minute or so segment where we get to announce a new winner each week, as well as a different product that we are giving away. To enter the ongoing raffle, all you need to do is write an honest review of our podcast, either on iTunes Podcasts or on YouTube. Sorry, Spotify, Google Podcast users, you don't have the option to write written reviews on Spotify and Google Podcasts. So please just hop on over to iTunes or YouTube temporarily and enter in the ongoing drawing for the raffle. And that's it. That's all you have to do. Each week we'll announce a new winner, read their review, and give away some of our products. Okay, everyone, I think that's it for the updates. Enjoy this kickoff episode, and as always, thank you for being part of the Four Visions family. Welcome to the Four Visions Market Podcast, a space built on the principles of integrity and reciprocity. Together, we will engage in thought-provoking conversations about plant medicines, why these plants are coming out of the rainforests, jungles, and mountains after thousands of years, and what it means to be in right relationship with the ancestral wisdom cultures and guardians of these traditions. I'm your host, Marysia Miernowska, founder and director of Four Visions Market. This podcast is the natural evolution in our commitment to providing you, our tribe, with incredible resources to support you on your healing journey through plant medicines. Welcome home. Dear friends, we are so excited to continue right where we left off with the second half of the first season of the Four Visions Market podcast. Today, I am joined by Marysia Miernowska, an herbalist, teacher, author, earth activist, gardener, and green witch, rooted in the wise woman tradition of healing. Her work and devotional practices are centered around the mission of supporting a deepening of the love and regenerative relationship between earth and people, for the mutual healing of both human and plant communities. A multicultural and multilingual devotee of Mother Earth, Marysia has grown up internationally and traveled extensively, learning different ways of tending to the earth and sharing regenerative grassroots earth medicine. Marysia is the director of the School of the Sacred Wild and runs a yearly online apprenticeship teaching herbal medicine, regenerative farming practices, earth magic, holistic healing, and plant spirit communication. In today's talk, we dive deep into Marysia's journey with the plants and how herbalism serves as a nourishing and restorative homecoming for all beings. It was so fun talking plants with her. She is truly a wealth of embodied wisdom. Marysia carries us through an incredible overview of the seasons from a cyclical lens of living more in harmony with the earth. She shares practical plants according to the seasons, and it's really quite fabulous, reminding us all how to slow down and move in more alignment with the earth's cycles and rhythms. If you are interested in learning about how we can be in greater intimacy with the plants and all of nature, this episode is for you. I hope you enjoy, and as always, thank you for tuning in. Welcome, Marysia. It's a pleasure and an honor to have you on the Four Visions podcast. Thank you so much for coming and sharing with us today. I've been just in awe of you and the way in which you tend to your community and are such an incredible leader and teacher and embodiment of the sacred feminine and of what it means to live in relationship with the earth. And so I'm really honored and excited to talk with you today and just want to give you a really warm welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here and to connect with you and your audience and community.
Beautiful. So I always like to get a little bit of background from people when we just are starting the conversation for those who might not be familiar with your work and your school. But I would love to ask it in a kind of a unique way. So if you wouldn't mind just sharing a little bit about your journey with the plants and how they have guided and informed your life's journey and have accompanied you to where you are today in your path.
Okay. Well, I'll try to be succinct because as these things tend to be, that could be a whole episode in itself. But I was born in Poland, and my first kind of memories and connection with the plants were from my great grandmother showing me how to pick nettles in Warsaw. And you know, my grandparents were incredible activists and fighters in the resistance against the Nazi occupation. And they also survived on wild weeds while Poland was, you know, in war and occupied for many years. And there are certain kind of memories I have of my earlier childhood, like this. There's this one memory of like this, the sparkle of linden flowers and infusing linden flowers in water and just, you know, feeling like the presence of fairies, and which I didn't have language for at the time. But there are these moments where I feel the plants really in my childhood. And I want to kind of take a moment to really extend this as our listeners are listening, because I feel like we all have that. You know, we all have these plants that we remember, whether it was this tree that we used to climb or, you know, the roses in our grandmother's gardens or whatever it might be. So then I moved to the United States. We immigrated. You know, fast forward many years, I studied architecture and was really passionate about social justice and wanting to create communities that would be healthy for the environment, for people, for culture connection. I ended up working in kind of this intentional community world, but for an architect. And it was a very patriarchal job, and it was very depleting. And it was, you know, overworking many hours in front of the computer. And there were other factors that made me feel my energy and my joy and kind of my vitality and life force just slowly start to bleed away. There were other things that happened that pertain more to the nonlinear realm that are like a whole other deep story. But clearly, you know, it was a moment of death and rebirth, and a moment of kind of a crossroads in my path. And I ended up leaving architecture and moving to northern Vermont, where I lived on a mountain and taught art and Spanish at a ski academy, and just started spending so much time in the forest. And it was really in the forest, in the woods in Vermont, that a lot of these plants that are also native to Europe and really all over the Americas, you know, started to speak to me again and really began bringing me back to vitality and like nursing me back and really restoring my body and my energy. And I found the Gaia School of Healing and Earth Education in Southern Vermont, led by Sage Maurer, who was my beloved friend and sister and teacher, and began studying with her. And that was, you know, that was a huge remembering and reintroduction to the wise woman tradition of healing, to folk medicine, to plant spirit medicine. I ended up moving to Los Angeles several years later and was designing gardens. And I have also a background in permaculture and gardening, food, biodynamics, things like that. And then another kind of huge death and rebirth, you know, and ended up a lot of things were taken, a lot of things died, and in that kind of energy of Kali and of the death, there was a huge surge of energy of rebirth. And at that time, I was a mother already to my daughter, who was just a few months old, and in this kind of I would say like an aspect of like the fierce feminine, of like, we will be okay. Me and my daughter will be okay. And also just a real, I guess like a courageous claiming of what I'm here to do. You know, I opened a chapter of the Gaia School of Healing in California, with the, you know, blessing and upon the request of my beloved friend and teacher, Sage. I taught in person for many years, a decade, and in Los Angeles, and the plants, have really shown me how people are in need of relationship with the earth. And, as a healer, I look around and I see a lot of heartbreak and unhappiness and dis-ease, and like a kind of like a soul forgetting of just the magnificence and the creative magic that we have as humans who can tend the earth and be in this intimate, delicious relationship of feeding life and midwiving death. And so I really was seeing this need for people to connect to the land, and seeing also the land really needing people to remember how to care for her and to see her and witness her. And so my life has been very much dedicated to bridging that gap and supporting the creation of right relationship, of like a love relationship between the earth and people.
Mm. So beautiful, and just feel so much full circle energy with the sharing of your story from, your journey in Poland, being birthed there, and then the reclaiming of it through the same herbs that your ancestors survived on. That literally just activated me hearing that was the entry point for you to find your way. And there's something about when we really find our purpose that it really does bring everything full circle, not just for us and our lives, but for our ancestors and what they did and how they paved the way for us to come in. And I'm sure that that's been a big part of your journey, but so beautiful. Yeah. I also have Polish roots, and so really just resonating with that, and so sacred in the way in which you have opened this path for yourself and really called upon the Earth Mother to hold you and your child and create a way for you, and then supporting others in doing the same and returning to this intimacy with nature, this intimacy with our great mother who's always there, and she's always sustaining us. She's always nourishing us. And we often are just unaware of how to rest into her and to come into connection with her and attune ourselves to her. And so really feel that embodied within you, and so special just to hear a little bit more about your background and how you found yourself in the beautiful path that you're walking today. So thank you for that. And, I would love to go a little bit deeper into this concept of herbalism as a nourishing path, as a restorative path. You mentioned that was what drew you when you were very much in a very rigid career. And I just want to say, it's so exemplifying of the message and of the medicine that, like, architecture, there's literally nothing more rigid and nothing more, strict and straight. And then like letting yourself go into the mother, letting yourself return to your own roots. So special and powerful. And I'm sure it catalyzed a lot of healing and embodiment and evolution for you in your own personal journey. But I'm very curious if you could expand a little bit more on this concept of this nourishment path and what it means, to let the plants be and the earth be this restorative connection for us, for those who maybe haven't had that before or who don't know how to go about building that intimate relationship with the earth and with nature and with plants.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think a good place to start is actually coming back to that point that you identified, that place of releasing the career in architecture and like leaning into and falling into and allowing myself to like drink in the wild and to be, kind of rewoven, retethered into wild nature. And there is something interesting that I haven't actually spoken to about often on interviews about that moment. And I think a lot of people can relate to this. At the time, I had really severe like adrenal fatigue and had a lot of symptoms that were connected to deep exhaustion. They were connected to, a lifestyle as a university student of like drinking coffee. And in architecture, there's this whole awful fraternity like culture of like, of like staying up and doing all-nighters. And if you don't feel worthy unless you've pulled an all-nighter, it's really, really quite toxic. So there was a lot of kind of burning the candle at both ends. There were other like dynamics with the masculine within the context that I was working in that were unhealthy and, not safe. There were a lot of different things that were happening that led to my body being deeply fatigued, and my adrenals and, food sensitivities. And I think that kind of level of exhaustion is something that a lot of people can relate to. I think we've all been there, all of us who live in modern capitalist society. That's actually, I think, the primary symptom mm-hmm. of living in a capitalist modern society that is constantly pushing us to produce, to do more, to be outward, that is constantly sending us messages of unworthiness, of competition. And within that space, I started looking for ways to heal myself. And I was always interested in alternative medicine, but it was interesting to see that I went to healers who I thought would be really supportive and able to help me. And yet I couldn't really, nothing really worked. Things were expensive. Supplements were expensive. There was still an interesting dynamic that I can only later now put words to. There was a dynamic of the heroic tradition where I would go to an alternative healer, or even a traditional healer like an acupuncturist, and there would be this dynamic of like, they have the answers, their tools, their plants, their methods, and poor me coming here in need of them. And it was kind of inaccessible. It was expensive. And, so many mixed messages. When I landed in Vermont and began just showing up to the temple, which is just wild nature, and just allowing myself to walk and rest and breathe in the fresh air. And when it was snowy, I would just follow my intuition and nibble on the tips of the pines. This wonder and magic and aliveness came back. And I was drinking the wild weeds. I was drinking nettles infusions. I was drinking burdock root infusions. I began to work with plants that are restorative, that are deeply nourishing, and that thrive in the wilderness. And what happened is it's like I was sucking at the teat of the earth mother. It's like that first infusion of nettles that so many of my students have. It's like they just gulp it down because all of our cells in our body are like, oh my God, where has this been? It doesn't matter if you're drinking like green juices or trying to get chlorophyll in your diet. There's something that is unique about the energy and the mineral content and the vitamin content, and the magic of plants coming from intact wild ecosystems, from soil that is not in a monocrop situation, from soil that is from the wild. There's an intelligence. There's the vibration of the whole network of the fungi, of the trees, and it brings you back to life. And it's a non-heroic way of healing. And for that reason, people often just skim right by it, or they don't even notice it. It's not loud medicine. It's not expensive. In fact, it's free. It's not glorified. There's no power dynamic. It's accessible food medicine that is nourishing, nutritive, restorative. And it goes to that root chakra that I think all of us are constantly needing to be tending. And it floods us with nourishment, with the love of the earth, with the songs of wild places. And it makes us come back to life. And that's what happened with me. And, ever since then, it's that relationship with wild food, with the medicinal herbs, with safe, accessible herbs has only deepened. It's an endless love affair, an endless relationship. And unlike some of the kind of more shamanic plants, right, that we both are familiar with and adore, of course, this is plants that you take every day. These are plants that are restorative and fill you up every single day. And they don't take anything from you. So, yeah.
I love that. And it's like, it's really is this homecoming, right? And this return to this way of being in relationship with life, where we are in relationship and where we're moving with the cycles of the earth, where we're in harmony, in true harmony and balance and intimacy. I really like that word when it comes to, our relationship with the mother, our relationship with nature. And we're so deeply craving this, as a society. And this absence of the connection, I think, is also one of those root fundamental causes of all of the pain and suffering that so many of us are plagued with in our society. And, you mentioned this element of the patriarchy or of the solar-based society that we live in. And I think that that's really important to highlight in this conversation because many of us are on the healing journey, are on a spiritual path, and we haven't necessarily returned back to the rhythms and what it means to live in the cycles of the earth and in union, in synchronicity with the cycles of the earth. And many who are listening have been walking a plant path in some capacity, working with the master plants for a long time, but we're still operating from this place of doing. And this is so deeply conditioned within us. And I love the way that you said it. It's like, it's not a glorified path to work with the plants in our garden or in our backyard, right? There's nothing like super shiny and sparkly about that path, but it's so accessible and provides us that deep nourishment that we're needing right now so deeply as humanity, as we're hearing that call back to the ways of our ancestors, the call back to what it means to live with the earth and to be in union with the earth. And so I was wondering if you could speak a little bit more on these reflections that you've had over the course of your career, sharing and teaching of the ways in which we're deeply conditioned and, this concept of both the heroic healer too, and then also just in our society, this doing, this overachieving element, and how we start to release some of that attachment to these deeply ingrained conditionings and allow ourselves to open a little bit more to the softness, the gentleness of really accessible tools that exist all around us in nature.
Yeah, such a great, important question. I think it's what it's all about, reweaving ourselves into the natural cycles of nature, into the regenerative, self-renewing cycles of nature. How do we do that? Well, it's so beautiful because, of course, Mother Nature has all the answers in just how she is, right? And we can learn directly from her. And this, again, is something I want to emphasize, learning directly from nature versus, again, creating power dynamics of that heroic healer or the spiritual teacher. She provides all of the answers. And it's in the direct relationship with her that we can receive messages and healing that is really unique to us. And, no healer, no spiritual teacher, no matter how incredible they are, can fully know our karma or understand what our soul needs. And for us to be on a path of strengthening that inner voice and learning how to listen directly to spirit and the earth and ourselves, that is how we weave ourselves to connect to our purpose and our gifts and our joy and to our unique relationship to spirit. But the cycles of nature that are around us are here to teach us. So we have the seasons, the 4 seasons, which the North and the Southern Hemisphere experience, and the equatorial a little bit less. But the seasons of summer, of fall, of winter, and spring are mirrored and echoed in the phase of the moon, the 4 phases of the moon. They're also echoed in kind of these 4 archetypes of our lives, and they're echoed in the rhythm of the day. And so we literally have these wheels that are spinning, and that the vision that I always have is like, we want to surf these currents. We don't want to be paddling upstream, like in resistance. Like, we want to be like, ooh, okay, what is the moon cycle now? What is the season now? What is the energy of the day right now? And how can I align my own energy and my actions and what I need to do today. How can I align my rhythms into this current? How can I ride and surf this wave? So in terms of the seasons, the season of summer is the most solar season, of course. It corresponds to the full moon. It corresponds to the mother archetype in this cosmology. And it's the moment where like the days are the longest and nature is like, okay, baby, like work it, be responsible, show up. I'm giving you these long days so that you work in the garden and so that you produce fruit and food and projects that will then feed you and your loved ones when the energy of this expansion and growth begins to wane. And then we move into the fall, and in the fall, the leaves are releasing, the trees are, there's this exhale, there's a literal exhale, like a whew, and those extending parts of the plants begin to die back, and plants begin to draw their medicinal properties and their energy deeper into them and into their roots so that they can preserve themselves for the dormancy of winter and then sprout back up in the spring. And so nature is showing us to do the same. Nature is showing us to draw our energy in so that we don't burn out, so that we can then sprout back up effortlessly in the spring. And so rituals of release are really powerful in the fall, and really kind of, we're getting into that moment right now, as like the days become shorter, releasing some of the responsibilities, releasing a little bit of the work, like starting to slow down a little bit more, starting to draw our energy in a little bit more. And around that fall equinox, we have this beautiful, perfect vibration of balance for a moment. And that balance between the outward and the inward. And from then on, we're really being called to draw our energy in. And so working with medicinal roots, it's just a great thing to do at that time. And you can just drink like burdock and dandelion root infusions, or ashwagandha, which is a fabulous male tonic, but wonderful for women as well, especially those who have thyroid or adrenal issues. Shatavari is a female reproductive tonic that kind of corresponds to the Ayurvedic medicine of ashwagandha. Any of the roots, burdock root is a nourishing herb, dandelion is a nourishing herb. Those are those restorative plants that are going to give you all the vitamins and minerals, and they're going to detoxify in a very slow and gentle and supportive way. And then in the fall, we're moving into the darkest time of the month, the winter. And that corresponds with the dark moon, the new moon, the winter solstice. It's the time of hibernation. It's the time of dreaming. It corresponds to the delta brain waves. When we're working with consciousness shifting medicine or meditation, we're slowing things down so that we can root in and plug into the vibration of the earth, the hum of the earth. And there's this dormancy of the linear mind, of the analytical mind. There's really a call to slow down and to tend the fire, like not letting the fire go out, right? And you can imagine our ancestors in the winter solstice in their cave or in their homes, like tending the fire. So it's that balance of light and dark. And I have found, working with just so many people and so many years, this is like the most countercultural thing, to slow down dramatically in the winter. When we do that, when we in the fall release and cut away these kind of toxic capitalist, overproductive, ever pushing pressures, and we lean into this darkness and softness and slowness and meditation, and we can work with medicinal mushrooms, then it's a wonderful time to be making broths with reishi and shiitake, to be drinking turkey tail tea, to be working with the fungi, the fungi kingdom. Also a great time to work with adaptogens, plants that build that resiliency, that are working on those roots again, and that build and fortify and cultivate this vitality that'll help us really spring forth in the spring. Plants again like ashwagandha, shatavari, schisandra. If we tend towards seasonal depressions, schisandra will be an adaptogen that brings in brightness and lightness and energy. Tulsi is another great adaptogen that beautifully kind of calms the nervous system and brings us into that meditative space. So drinking these herbs daily and meditating more and slowing down more and cultivating the hearth. And I love to do art in the winter and use candles and read and write. And when we get into those deeper states of consciousness, and I'm sure your listeners have experienced that before, like the ego dies and it's like we merge with the one mind, and we merge with this one body that we all are, which is the living earth. And then before we know it, as like the energy begins to wax and there's more light and the days become longer, we begin to feel this current of vitality slowly beginning to rise. And we move into that, towards spring, past Imbolc, which is like this cross-quarter holy day between winter solstice and the spring equinox. I always associate Imbolc with the feeling of being pregnant. It's like we begin to wake up from the winter being like, ooh, something is different within me. Like there's some creative, but I don't know what it is. It's still shrouded in mystery. And we cultivate and tend that creative energy into the spring. We begin to work in the spring with green plants. The earth wakes up with the wild weeds. She often wakes up with bitter plants like dandelion leaves and mustard greens, plants that purify the blood and help us release the stagnation of winter and bring in vitality and aliveness. Again, a great time to work with nettles and oat straw and red raspberry leaf and these wild weeds that bring in a lot of energy. And that springtime is associated with the maiden archetype, with like the youth and with the element of air and the direction of east. And it's like, what are our dreams? Like, let us be in the innocence. Let us be in the delight, in the play. The earth is waking up again. There's so much energy for rebirth. What do we want to dream and bring into being? And as the spring matures and that, half moon of the spring begins to be the full moon, we're bringing back ourselves into that mother archetype of tending the projects, tending the creative energy, creating, being responsible, showing up, and being in our power. And so those 4 kind of seasons move through the moon. They move through each day. Like when the sun rises, we have that energy of east and of new beginnings, of innocence, the new day. Noon corresponds to like the most solar aspect. That's like when we maybe should be eating our largest meal, or like, the middle of the day is when we should be really doing our work, focusing our energy, producing what we need to produce. And then like 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock, the energy starts to wane. And so slowing down and allowing ourselves to, if there are things on the to-do list that still need to get done, like which ones are the ones that are maybe more embodied? Maybe it's like moving and running errands or going, like what can be less, just kind of shifting our energy and then creating this around sunset time, like a yummy hearth, lighting candles, changing the light, burning some blessing herbs, drawing our energy inward the way that fall teaches us to, creating yumminess for connection and intimacy with our family, our loved ones, our pets, ourselves. And the evening hours, moving from like what corresponds from fall to winter, down regulating the nervous system with herbs like passion vine tea or tulsi, so that we can get into the dreaming mind, into the creative energy, and then slip into sleep and actually drop into deep restorative rest. And it's in that deep restorative state of rest that the human growth hormone is produced, that our body is regenerating. And so, as a contrast, in our modern culture, people kind of wake up often and like go and slam the coffee. And like, there isn't this like, can I delight in the innocence of this new day being born? Mm-hmm. And then, from noon to 3 is this dramatic push. And then in the afternoon, it's like this, oh my God, I'm crashing, but I still have more to do. So I'm going to have sugar or coffee or whatever. And then there's this like exhaustion from pushing in the time when you're supposed to be drawing your energy in and getting into the body. And then people, are often again, like pushing, it's dark and they're still looking at screens or trying to get work done, or like, trying to kind of connect with their family or make a dinner, but they're exhausted at this point. And then, they crash. And then that, a common symptom is this like sleep that's not actually deeply restorative, or this waking up at night, or insomnia. It's like you think, oh my God, I'm so tired, but why can't I sleep now? And, that leads to more reliance on caffeine or on sleep medicine. And it's kind of a vicious cycle.
Mm. Thank you so much for that eloquent journey that you just took us through the seasons. I was just enjoying that so much. It's like you were painting this beautiful, beautiful painting for us and just really settling in. So one thing that I learned through my journey with the seasons is that oftentimes we think we're being more efficient when we're trying to get in that last little bit done when it's really not the time for doing, but we're actually causing exput when we're really needing to turn inwards and slow down. And it actually makes everything slower and not as efficient. And as I've learned, in my journey, and, you mentioned the women have the lunar cycle as well. And so what you just expressed for the yearly seasons is also happening within us, the bleeding women, each month in our lunar phases. And one thing that I have studied in my journey is that when I really take that time for rest, and I take the times that are meant for inwards and times to replenish, then when I go back out for my summer, I'm so much more charged up and ready to execute, right? Ready to bring forth. But if I try to like push it, then I get to summer and I'm already a little tired. I'm already burned out, which is, the burnout that you were talking about. And so oftentimes in our minds, we try and analyze it when really nature has exemplified and given us the path. It's so simple. All we have to do is follow her, and by doing so, we're able to, get everything done. Everything will get done when it needs to get done. We reach the finish line or whatever, the end of the day, but we're in balance. We're synchronized. And that's something that is like this constant teaching. I think that, the more that we walk, we're constantly going deeper into that study of how to do it, because I think while it's innate within us, it's not conditioned. So learning how to release some of the conditions of the doing, the expectations that we put on ourselves or that society puts on us, and really tuning inwards to attune to this inner listening of the inner rhythms. I also spend about half of the year in South America, and we don't have the seasons there, as you mentioned. And that also is a challenge I found, especially since I was born and raised in California, and I was so accustomed to having those changing points in the year that help me to tune into where we're at in the cycle. I'm curious if you could share any wisdom or advice you have for someone who is perhaps living where the seasons are not so exponent there.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that's where we can really lean into the lunar cycle. And
Okay.
so following the lunar cycle and following the moon, and really resting when it's the dark moon. And if you are a bleeding person, your dark moon is when you bleed. And then opposite of the wheel is your full moon, which is when you ovulate. And that's your summer. So you can rest. If you're a bleeding person, you can rest. And it's very recommended to truly rest In traditional Chinese medicine, it's recommended to just stay in bed for one day or for 2 days. And this just feels so radical and impossible in our culture. But if we can actually do it and try it and not like go and get that workout in, or, if we can really try, again, there's that effortless energy that comes afterwards. It's like 3 days later, you're like running up the steps. You're so revived. But then if you're not a bleeding person and if you live in a tropical climate, you can also use the moon. And so having that quiet time, the inward time when it's the dark moon, cultivating a time of expansion as the moon waxes into fullness, being in that more like social networking, presenting, being outward when the moon is full, and then beginning to wane your practices and cultivate hearth and inner world as the moon begins to wane and get smaller and go into darkness again.
Yeah, that's a wonderful recommendation. And I think that being there, it's like really missing the changing of the leaves, really missing those signals, right, that are so apparent and obvious. But like you mentioned, that moon cycle is that constant and can be utilized as that tool. As promised, here's our new giveaway segment. Our first winner is Julie CG, who writes, "This podcast is so binge-worthy. I've listened to each new episode the day it comes out. There is so much wisdom being shared, which gives me so much insight into my life. I appreciate it so much. The care and thoughtfulness put into every conversation ripples through. Thank you, Mariah and Four Visions Market." Wow, thank you so much for your kind words and for taking the time to leave a review, Julie. You just won a set of our Dreamwise and Flow State adaptogenic mushroom chocolates. Please email us at thepodcast@fourvisionsmarket.com to coordinate the delivery of your package. Our Flow State and Dreamwise chocolate package supply includes a 1-month supply of medicinal chocolate cups infused with adaptogenic herbs and mushrooms for clean energy and focus. The Flow State chocolate is a daytime chocolate that includes lion's mane, reishi, chaga, cordyceps, maitake, schizandra berries, eleuthero, and astragalus. And our Dreamwise chocolate, which is for nighttime and relaxation, includes lion's mane, reishi, L-theanine, holy basil, ashwagandha, blue lotus, passion flower, and astragalus. All ingredients used are fresh, organic, and of the highest purity. Each batch of medicinal chocolates is made in reverence and prayer. So congratulations, Julie CG. And to enter the ongoing raffle, all you need to do is write an honest review of our podcast, either on iTunes or YouTube. Sorry, guys, Spotify, Google Podcasts don't allow written reviews, so Spotify and Google Podcast listeners will have to temporarily go to iTunes or YouTube to leave your written review. And that's it. Each week, we'll announce a new winner, read your honest reviews on the show, and give away some awesome products. Now, back to the show. I'm curious if you have anything to say about the ancient cultures that live in the Southern Hemisphere or didn't have those cycles, because you mentioned a little bit about, the European ancestors and North American ancestors or people who living with the cycles that was very much ingrained. Do you have anything to say about, cultures that never had those apparent cycles, or were they really more lunar based as far as like the way that they oriented in their communities? I'm not sure if there's anything that is coming through that.
Well, I'm not an expert, but what I do know is that a lot of indigenous cultures in the Southern Hemisphere, they do hold sacred the equinox, these cross-quarter moments. So those are very sacred portals. And those demark different seasons. But what's really interesting is that often the signal of a season changing or more like, I guess we can use the word season is often an animal. And so, like in certain cultures and places in Colombia, it's when a certain frog begins to sing that now we are entering like the rainy season or this other season or the season, the time to plant. And it's when a certain bird stops singing or there are these a lot of animal sounds that will demark moments of planting and when to stop planting and these different phases. So maybe when you are in the Southern Hemisphere, it could be fun to ask some of your local teachers and to become, attuned, like what are the sounds that are telling us where we are right now in our journey with the earth.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I love that. Definitely going to do that. Beautiful. Okay, so I'm curious if you could expand a little bit more, Marysia, on this concept of working with an individual plant and these plant meditations of how one would go deepening in relationship with a particular plant that they want to learn from, and just a little bit of a backstory with Four Visions and the plants that we source and carry. We do a lot of education of how you could incorporate plants that you might find in your backyard that are native and local to you, and access information, access allyship from these plants in simple ways and within the traditions that we uphold, which are Southern shamanic traditions. And so a lot of that has to do with plant baths. We work with teas, but baths in the sense of you make an herbal bath and then you pour it over the body. And in that process, we typically will recommend that a person is dialoguing and communicating with that plant that they're working with, asking to receive messages, insight, guidance from that plant, placing their intention in the plant, and really from that moment, whether they're harvesting it or preparing it, beginning to infuse their essence in that plant. And I'm really curious what other practices you guide your students through in that process, and how these plant meditations can be a really accessible exercise for people who are looking to deepen their connection with nature and deepen their connection with their ecosystems surrounding them.
Beautiful. Well, I want to start by saying that I just love what you shared about the ways that you share ways of connecting to the plants and the plant baths. And they also are part of my practice and tradition. And a lot of what you were sharing about dialoguing and having that open heart and speaking directly to the plant as a conscious being, as a spirit, as a teacher is really the same in European shamanism as well. And in many different traditions of shamanism all over the world, because ultimately we're working with conscious beings. So in terms of the plant spirit meditations, you're right. These are kind of the foundation of how I teach about the plants. And in my school, the School of the Sacred Wild, we have students receive 4 plants a month. Now the teachings are all done live on Zoom and online. And we do have in-person different groups as well. But every first Saturday of the month, we gather together, we make our teas, and we connect on Zoom and have a ceremony where I'm guiding students into these plant spirit meditations. And we're drinking the teas, and it's really a process of learning how to open the body energetically and physically. It's a prayer. The whole ritual is a prayer of opening our hearts and asking the spirit of the plant to enter our body and to commune with us. It's also a practice that has some similarities to tantric-based practices of learning how to experience an energy that is not your own within the fibers of your being, and to move that energy and to notice where it goes. And then we call in the spirit of the plant. And what's really incredible is that, often people think like, well, there are shamanic plants, right, that will allow me to have visuals. But the truth is every plant has a plant spirit. Every plant is a plant teacher. Each plant has its own teachings, its own wisdom, its own beautiful interwoven web of relationship to land and people and culture and the wild. And so these plant meditations, they will bring often for people visuals or messages that people hear. Some of us, of course, are more like visually psychic. Some of us are more auditorily psychic. Some of us, it's more like sensation in the body. I'm also guiding my students into noticing where do they feel the energy of the plant in their body. And as like a very easy place for all of us to connect to, you can imagine drinking ginger tea, right? And it's like, oh yeah, of course, I know how that feels. There's a warming, like energy expands, my sweat pores open. I feel it in my belly. I feel it in my heart. If I'm really tuning in and actually meditating, I'll hear my blood, I'll hear my circulation. And so there's so much that we can learn directly from the plants. And through this process of plant spirit meditation that we do, we each realize and receive the directions of the plants. Like, is this a plant that is asking me to work with it right now? How do I feel? How does my body feel? What message did come in? Is this an ally for me right now? And what's beautiful about the plants, and I'm sure your listeners can totally relate to this, is like we are always changing. And so there might be a plant that you really connect with. And then like 5 years later, you're like, yeah, cool. Or there might be a plant that you're like, ooh, I don't know. We don't really jive. Like, meh. And then, 5 years later, you're like, oh my God, where have you been all my life? You're amazing. Like, thank you. So it's about creating direct relationship. It's about intimacy. It's about, like, again, it's a very tantric meditation practice of not being in the head, not blasting out of the body, but actually our body is our sacred vessel of communion. The earth is our body. Our body is the earth. And bringing spirit and exchange and intimacy and messages and love into the container of the body.
I love that. And it's so tangible and so simple. And, it's really special when we can form these relationships with the plants and then know when we need one of them. And that's really where true allyship comes in. We talk a lot in our community about building this toolbox of different tools, and they can be physical, tangible tools or spiritual tools that we utilize that we can call upon in different points in our life when we're needing that support. And one thing I find with the plants is that they come when you need them, and they bring you the medicine that you're needing when there's that alignment. And then they kind of go off, and there might be more in your peripheral. They might be like accompanying you from a distance for some time. And then, you'll move to a new place, and there will be this beautiful bush of rosemary that's like calling you to work with her and to come back into intimacy with the rosemary. And so they're really truly friends, and I think someone might listen to us talking about plants as friends and think we're cuckoo, but I think most of the people that are tuning into this conversation get it and are, interested in deepening their relationship with all of nature. And these practices of these communions, these deepenings and one-on-one with one particular plant is really, the easiest accessibility point, because like you mentioned, each plant has spirit. And so when we get a lot of different plants in the sphere, it starts to kind of make a lot of noise, and it can sometimes be hard to really attune to the messages and the medicine that each plant has for us. And so I really I love it. And I feel like these practices, these tools are such an incredible way to begin embodying more of the path of healing and to deepen in our relationship with nature.
Yeah. I'd love to just speak to a point you made. You were like, maybe people will think it's cuckoo to say that plants are friends, but here's why it's not cuckoo. There's a way that we can experience a kind of love, a flavor of love that we may have never experienced from a human relationship, that we can experience from the earth or from a specific plant. And we know this, for your listeners who work with a lot of master plants, maybe there's like an archetype of like an ever loving unconditionally loving, but also strict grandparent, right? Like some of the master plants have that energy, I feel. And maybe our grandparents were just like totally checked out, or, you know, or whatever, loved us in a beautiful way, their own unique way. But suddenly when we sit in ceremony with this plant, our soul responds to this kind of love, to this kind of message. And it opens up and awakens parts of us that are able to then respond in this relationship of like, oh, thank you, grandmother. Thank you for showing me that I need to like stop doing this and like to end this bullshit and that's it, done. Or like, thank you, grandmother, for allowing me to weep right now and feel so held, and to feel this level of love is available and possible and is what the universe is made of. And so the plants, they each have their own personality. They each love us in a different way. And then the plants of our own ancestry actually have a lot to offer us. There is a memory in our DNA and the fibers of our being of like, oh my God, I know you. You know me. An example that I love, a plant, is linden leaf and flower. It's a beautiful tree that grows all over Europe, South America, Central America as well, North America. It kind of grows all over the world. And it's very resilient. It's planted in a lot of urban areas, actually. And it has these beautiful yellow star-like flowers that come out in the spring that the bees love it. And it smells almost like jasmine. You can make an infusion of linden leaf and flower and meditate with this plant. And what you'll notice is that she tastes sweet and has this aroma that's almost, again, like jasmine. It's this feminine softness. And as you meditate with her and drink her in and really relax and open your body and receive her, you'll notice that she has an antispasmodic quality. The muscles relax, tension melts away. But there's also this support, this energy entering your root chakra and your heart chakra and soothing any tension in your belly, soothing any issues in the solar plexus of like unworthiness or any of that just melts away. And again, deeper into the meditation, what often happens is tears come because there's this feeling of, oh my goodness, you are holding me. I am feeling so supported. I am being washed in love. That ritual, right, of pouring the teas over our body, it's the same thing, but energetically. And you feel bad thoughts or tension or fears just melting away, washing away. You feel yourself like a new baby, just pure and held in such love. I've had so many students, thousands of students, experience a level of unconditional love with this plant that they've never experienced from their, biological mother or grandmother. And no fault of the people. And this is, I guess, the point, is that we can't receive all of the love and experiences of magic and relationship with humans. It's actually quite silly. That is cuckoo, to think that one person can fulfill all of our needs, or that we can be everything for one person. To be able to open ourselves to friendship, kinship, love with the natural world, with spirit, with the plants, allows us to be nourished and to have all parts of ourselves nourished, and allows us to experience love in a way that maybe we've never experienced from humans, and that's okay.
Thank you so much for bringing that into the conversation. I think it's a really important point. And for any of us who have had an existential or profound spiritual experience with God, it's been through some element of nature, right? And so nature is this embodiment of that connection that we're all seeking, that connection of wholeness, of unity, of divine connection and union. And so to be able to cultivate that relationship, once we've had just even a glimpse, we know we want more of it. And so the plant world opens us into this whole beautiful study of cultivating these relationships. And I so beautifully said what you shared about, the ways in which we look often to our human connections. And when you have a profound connection with the Earth Mother, or when you have even had a glimpse of what that connection can be, it feels so good on the most profound level and nourishes so deeply every single cell in our being, that after having an experience like that, it does seem silly to think that any human expression could even come close to the love and the wholeness that one feels in union with the mother. So
And
thank you.
what's really beautiful too is that these experiences in the plants teach us how to love. And that's really important too. It's not just about receiving. It's about learning how to embody what they teach us. And people who maybe never were mothered in a way that they wanted to be mothered can learn from the plants what it feels like to be mothered. They're having physical, spiritual experience. It's like I always see the songs of the plants. The plants, they tune us. Suddenly we're embodying and humming with this vibration of love or nourishment or safety, whatever it might be. Maybe our body never has known that. And that's why I love the restorative plants, because we work with them daily, or we work with them consistently. And it's like, you have an instrument, you need to tune it every day. And so it's through that consistent tuning, that consistent coming back to, this is what it feels like to be in my body. This is what it feels like to have my heart open. That then we are trained by the plants and taught, and we begin to embody them. And we are capable of loving in such a more vast and powerful way. And so again, I've had students who never had healthy mothers be mothered by the plants, work with plants like motherwort, linden, tulsi, become embodied in this vast ability to love and be able to bring it into their relationships with their children. And I think that's so important.
That's beautiful. I'm curious. So I have two final questions. So we're nearing the end, but you mentioned motherhood a few times in this conversation. I'm also a mother, and I'm constantly in this journey of finding ways in which to bring my child into the ritual of life and bring this connection with nature and the plants into our lifestyle together. And I'm very curious if you have anything that you could share on different practices or things that you found in your studies and teaching of ways in which children, because children are so already in the vibration of nature, right? They're so pure in that innocence, and they're already vibrating the frequency of the plants. But to get children to come and tend to a garden if they're very little, or get them to want to drink a tea, sometimes it's challenging. And I think it's also about the presentation. But I'm curious if you have any wisdom or insights that you could share on ways in which to invite children into this communion with the plants.
Yeah, well, I think you're so right. I mean, the kids, they're already communing, and they're doing it, in a non-intellectual, just instinctive way. I think, things we can do as parents is like refer to plants and the earth as he or she, like it's the moon. Oh, look, she is full, like not adding it to living beings. I love camping. I just love being outdoors as much as possible. And I have taken my daughter camping, and I take her outside. We spend as much time outside as possible, and spending time in wild nature, making the kids just feel really naturally comfortable, by rivers or in the forest, playing with them outside, letting it all be play. I think those are some ways where they just grow up feeling connected and comfortable in intimacy with nature. And, I think we don't have to have expectations of them like drinking certain teas or, meditating or things like that. For them, play is their connection to the divine. It's the way their imaginal realms, like cultivating imagination, storytelling. I think all of those things really help them become adults that are connected and have relationship with the unseen world as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think the point that resonates the most is helping them to feel safe in nature. And I think that's so important and overlooked. If we think about, children who are being raised in cities and just the massive amount of disconnection that so many children are having to nature, it's very understandable when people get scared of bugs or get scared of the dark or just the elements that are nature, the unknown, the great expansiveness, right? And so I think one of the greatest gifts that we can give to children is helping them to feel part of nature in whatever way that looks, in whatever way naturally infuses with our lifestyle and our routines, but letting them develop it on their own, of course, and through this play is so key. And then really just cultivating that as like a foundation, and just thinking about, our children growing up into adults, having that as their root foundation of feeling this safety and knowing of nature, right? This divine, their own relationship with nature that has been supported and nourished. That is the future that I want to create for my children and for, the future generations to walk upon this earth, is this return and this coming home.
Yeah. And I think also like having children walk barefoot as much as possible indoors and especially outside. And for people who live in cities, when you take your kid to the park, like allow it to be a ritual. Oh, we've arrived. We take off our shoes and our socks. Allowing kids to play outside. I think scientists are finally catching up with what so many ancient traditions have always known. There's a lot of validity to the importance of actually touching the earth. It has a powerful anti-inflammatory effect, and people call it earthing now, but at least 20 minutes a day of touching the earth is actually vital to regulate inflammation in our body, to regulate our nervous system, and to develop the feet. I spent a lot of time, I just did a walk. I walked across Spain this summer. I did a pilgrimage from the French border to the ocean. So the last 3 weeks I've been walking like 15, 20 miles. And I'm just like, every day I'm like, feet, thank you. I love you. And I just like to see my feet get stronger, my ankles get thicker, massaging my feet. I mean, our feet are the living body that is connecting to the living body of the earth. And so I think massaging our children's feet, having them be outside, having their feet grow and develop in a way where they can, make some calluses, they can walk, skip on stones. These are things that I'm always doing. I'm always walking barefoot, and I used to have this gravel driveway. I could just run across it. It had these big, large stones. I really want to cultivate that and keep that up in my body. And I think for our children, if they're in shoes, and wearing socks all the time, it's kind of the beginning of, a direct physical interaction place of connection to the earth that is getting kind of warped and is not getting cultivated. Like, it's just, feet are amazing.
Celebrating our beautiful feet and that direct connection to the Earth Mother. I love it. Beautiful, Marysia. Thank you. So I have one final question for you, and then we'll talk a little bit about the School of the Sacred Wild. But this is a question I like to ask people that come onto the show, and I think it's very pertinent to this conversation today because we've focused a lot today on how the earth is here to support us. And I know that you also are a big proponent of right relationship with the earth and what it means to be in sacred reciprocity with the earth. And so I would love to close on on this question of what are some of the ways in which we can tend to our Earth Mother and take care of her in anything from small, minute actions or thoughts to greater deeds and greater ways in which we can be in service to her and love her and give her all of this gratitude and reverence that we feel when she holds us and gives to us and takes care of us.
Oh, thank you for this question. I love it. So many things to share. I will try to be concise. Well, one thing we can do is to work with plants that are abundant and accessible and not endangered. And I think especially as plant people, and I know so many of your listeners are plant people, that is a primary place. When we become allied with plant medicine, it becomes our duty to be in right relationship and to be protectors of these plants. And so that means not working with plants that are over harvested. And, it's the difference of being an adult and being a little child who's like, but I want it, but it makes me feel good. It's like, if you are a true ally, you care about the well-being of this being. And that's where, again, the wild weeds and the restorative plants, are so great because they're abundant and they're free. And the earth is saying, here you go. Have as much as you want. You're not destroying an ecosystem by harvesting these plants. So that's one very important way. As a kind of side note, I think maybe a lot of your listeners use white sage to burn white sage to cleanse space. And this is kind of a great learning opportunity, being in right relationship with white sage. White sage is endangered. It's over harvested. And, for lack of education, people often will burn like an entire smudge stick. And it's incredibly wasteful and not necessary. And so traditionally, the Chumash people, who are the people who this plant belongs to, and the Tongva and the people of really Southern California, it's where white sage is native to, they will burn one leaf at a time. And so if you take apart your smudge stick and just take out one leaf, you'll see that you can smudge an entire room, an entire audience with just one leaf. So knowing how to use the plants, never buying wild harvested white sage. The indigenous people who are still alive and well, they are asking us loudly to not purchase wild harvested wild sage, to not harvest ever white sage. I teach all of my students never to harvest white sage from the wild. But what we can do, those of us who live in Southern California and in other climates, is we can grow it. So this is, again, right relationship is plant it in your garden, plant it in the wild, even if you can make sure it won't die. So, and if you're buying white sage, make sure you're buying it from cultivated white sage from a farm. So that's an example. Other things we can do to really take care of and give back and just be in right relationship with the Earth Mother is composting. Composting is so easy and it makes such a huge difference. When we compost, we're throwing away our food scraps instead of in the trash, which ends up in landfills and creates more methane gas and really harms the environment. We're putting it back into the soil, and then we're actually feeding the Earth Mother and giving her all of the microbes and the nutrients that she needs and nitrogen to create more topsoil. The statistics are really staggering, and it's a lot for us to be with the reality of where we are right now as a planet, as a living Earth ecosystem. And there's not a lot of topsoil left because of all of the ways that we've been farming, tilling, and doing monocrops and spraying pesticides. The topsoil, which is the thin layer of soil that actually is needed for plants to grow, is really disappearing. And I mean, I remember 10 years ago sharing the statistic that scientists were saying there was only 60 years left of topsoil. So that's really alarming. We can't grow food if we don't have topsoil. And we can actually grow soil. We can actually create soil and create topsoil really easily by composting, by putting our compost food scraps back into the earth. There's all sorts of ways. Even if you live in a city, you can get a worm bin, or you can get a closed little compost spinning machine, and you'll see your food becoming really rich, amazing soil, and then you can put it back on the earth. So composting is huge. Regenerative farming, supporting regenerative farmers. Regenerative farmers are using practices like planting cover crops and different practices that build soil instead of taking and depleting soil. So connecting with your local farmers, shopping from the farmers market as much as possible, reducing our use of plastic, supporting farmers, asking them if they use cover crops, like showing interest in regenerative practices. These are all ways that we can really support the movement of regenerative agriculture, which is thankfully becoming more mainstream. And we can really, at this point as consumers, especially in the United States, we can get regeneratively grown pretty much anything. So supporting that is a great way to support people who are directly creating more soil, more topsoil. Those are a couple ways that come to mind. And I think the last one that I'll mention is just consuming less. Do you really need a new car? No, you don't. Do you really need a new iPhone? No, you don't. What do we really need? And at least being awake and responsible when we are buying a new car or a new phone, like being educated and being aware that this is the earth. Like our devices are made of the body of the earth, and they're being mined. And what kind of practices are connected to the mining, really becoming educated consumers and trying to consume less, buying secondhand things, trading, really just trying to buy less stuff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Every time I ask that question, I get a different answer. And I love just the compilation of all the many different ways and forms in which we can be more in our awareness and make those decisions that we have to make on a daily basis from the heart and from this place of recognizing our interconnectedness with all life. So thank you for all of those beautiful recommendations. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
So we wove in the School of the Sacred Wild a few times throughout the conversation, which was really nice. And I would love to just open the space now for you to share a little bit more about your upcoming program and this offering, which I do feel is really so beautifully aligned with our community and what they're needing at this time, as well as just a wonderful complement to anyone who is walking a plant path in any capacity. And so whatever you feel called to share, also include obviously the logistical elements that we need to hear, and the space is yours.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much. It's such a joy to be here and connect with all your community and listeners. And yes, I warmly invite all of you to sign up for the apprenticeship to the Sacred Wild. It's a 10-month-long course. It's both a spiritually transformative and personally healing journey, as well as a course and an education in folk herbalism, plant spirit meditation, deep ecology, earth magic. And we move through the seasons of the year. We begin September 9th. So registration is currently open, and you can get all the information on our website, schoolofthesacredwild.com. And we begin in September, and then registration closes at the end of August, and we journey together for 10 months. And there's such incredible community that is formed, such amazing connections. And we really travel through the wheel of the year, learning about the seasons, each month meeting 4 new plants, drinking them together, learning rituals and practices that are connected to how to grow your own food, how to make herbal medicine, how you can heal your family and make healing foods and tinctures and remedies for your children, boosting immunity or regulating hormones. We move through every system of the body, the immune system, the reproductive, the digestive, circulatory, nervous system, respiratory. We move through all chakras, and we move through all seasons and these archetypes. And it's a journey of reweaving ourselves into the natural, ever-renewing, deeply magical cycles of nature. And it's a journey of really connecting deeper to who we are. And it's so incredible because, after this apprenticeship, everybody has a unique experience, but it's like what is birthed from this journey is so unique to the person, because it's like the plants show you who you are, and you become more courageous in tending that sacred wild within you and outside of you. And so it's just like always such a delight to see the miracles that bloom forth in our health, in our creativity, in our relationships, on our path. So yeah, I warmly invite people. We have a really beautiful, sacred business model. We have scholarships. We have honor-based sliding scale. We really are working to make earth medicine accessible to everybody. And the course is online, and there are 4 different kind of moments each month where we connect live, and we have such amazing community and have such a safe container of non-judgment, where people feel really seen and develop incredible friendships that last so many years, and their whole life. And we also have in-person mentorship. So throughout the world, really, we have mentors who are students who have already completed the program and are continuing on the path, and they create in-person workshops that correspond to what we're learning. We have incredible guest experts that come and speak, among them some amazing Indigenous leaders and activists. This year we have Benki, who is coming to share, and a lot of other incredible experts in the fields of health and wellness and spirituality and regenerative farming. Yeah, it's a really magical, beautiful, connective journey. And I warmly invite you all.
Yay. So beautiful and special and really exciting. I'm sending a lot of prayers and love for this upcoming cohort and this upcoming journey that you are all about to take. And for anyone listening, you have a little over a week to register. So if you're feeling the call in your heart, if you felt like this conversation was really aligned with where you are at in your spiritual journey and in your life, please listen to the call of your intuition to go work with this beautiful woman and her incredible community, because it is an incredible opportunity. And yeah, just really celebrating you, sister, and want to thank you so much for your time here today with us, and just for all that you are and your magic and your medicine, the way that you're showing up in this world in service from your heart. And it's a true beautiful blessing to connect with you today. And I'm just wishing you all the best on your journey and in your work in the world.
Thank you so much. I'm so grateful for this time together and for the beautiful way that you create such a welcoming, yummy space to dive into such deep and important and nourishing topics. And I'm sending lots of blessings to the whole community and to the lands that you all live on.
From everyone at the Four Visions Market family, we would like to thank you for listening to our podcast. We really hope that you've enjoyed the conversation and gained many new insights on plant medicines, ancestral wisdom, and much more. Please remember to visit our website at www.fourvisionsmarket.com for more resources and information on plant medicine and spiritual tools. And please don't forget to follow us across social media for regular updates on upcoming episodes. We are grateful for your support and look forward to continuing this path with you all. Until next time, take care, stay present, and stay connected.